Okay, so where should you build your chatbots? Should you be building a chat application from scratch? Should you build on top of existing conversational platforms? This is a very, very important topic that you need to consider while building AI powered applications. Now, you might be tempted to build something from scratch, but one thing to keep in mind is that things are constantly changing in this space, so it's very important to have a platform that allows you to iterate very, very quickly. So let's talk about why I think that Slack is the perfect platform for building your AI-powered chatbots, and why you should really standardize on building on tools like Slack. Now, the very first thing is that Slack has a superior conversational interface. This very fully featured collaboration tool provides you with rich and intuitive, conversational interface. It really simplifies how you integrate AI applications into it, and essentially makes it easy for you to develop and focus purely on building your applications versus thinking about all the complexities of building an actual chat application. So they have really robust APIs and they have all these things that are fully featured, making it so easy for you to just build your app and roll it out for people to start using immediately. Also, a ton of people are already using Slack at work. So if you, especially when you are trying to build applications that are going to be focused on your internal workforce, or you're building it for organizations, for startups, for organizations that use Slack, it is quite easy for you to roll it out to them without having to get them to start adopting your own application that you've built from scratch. The next one that is truly important is multimodality. This is one of the significant advantages of Slack. When you build out your own chat interface, you'd have to worry about text, voice, video, but this comes right out of the box with Slack. This flexibility is going to eliminate the need for you to manage all these multimodal features, and multimodality is the most exciting element of AI applications. The fact that you can interact both from an input and output perspective with different types of files, whether it is media, whether it is multimedia, text, you can really start to see the capabilities of AI come to life when we start combining these different modalities in the way we generate our responses. So if you want to build a versatile app without having to worry about building out all these capabilities, Slack provides this right out of the box, and it has been tested over a long period of time, and people love using Slack, so it makes it easy for you to really get those that functionality going. The final reason is really their APIs. I think most developers who understand how to build on Slack will tell you that is the first place they go to test their ideas. They have really reliable APIs that facilitate seamless integrations with your large language models and other applications that you might have. Now, whether you're a seasoned developer or you're just starting out, you'll find it straightforward to use these APIs to integrate them into your application. And it's also very, very well documented with a lot of tutorials and a great community that keeps contributing some really awesome projects which you can use. Slack has also done a lot of work in releasing SDKs that even further simplify things, and even now investing a lot in low-code solutions and serverless applications which allow you to deploy your applications even much faster. So my advice is build on Slack to test your ideas very quickly before starting to pour in a lot of time or effort in building your own chat application from scratch, if you even have to do that in the first place. So this, I would say, Slack, Discord, Teams, tools like that were purely and ready to go when it comes to building applications, but Slack specifically really blows every other application out of the park in this regard, because it is truly built for developers and makes it really easy for you to really sample and showcase the power of your AI capabilities very, very quickly without having to do a ton of work. One of the things that I love so much about Slack, for instance, is that I don't have to think about CSS and HTML, because it comes right out of the box with building blocks with the block kit, which allows you to just build these really cool interfaces right within Slack. So we're going to be building a few Slack applications, and I encourage you, not just for AI applications, even for other applications you might be building, to try building out your MVP in Slack to see how your back end is actually performing, to release your applications quickly, to get people to start using them as soon as possible. All right, so to do this, the very first thing you want to do is to go to api.slack.com/apps, and to create your new app, the very first thing you need to do is to click on Create New App. Now, there are two ways to create an app. You can either create an app from scratch, and this is more when you're trying to use the UI itself to manually do the configuration. We'll use this approach just because I want to show you a few things. But you can also use an app manifest, and what an app manifest is a declarative definition of your app. So it's either in YAML format or in JSON format. It defines all the things that you can do on your app. It makes it much faster if you understand how the settings work. It can make it really, really fast for you to create your Slack app. But in our case, let's go ahead and create the app from scratch. So I'm going to call this application here the Hello World application. So this is our first application. You can always change the name here later on as well. The next thing you want to do is to select a workspace where you're going to be installing the app for the first time. So be sure to be logged into that workspace. That way it can come up. Next up, you want to create the app itself, and now you have your first app created. But there are a few things that you need to do to actually make it work. One of those kind of things, first and foremost, would be to go into your OAuth permissions. And in your OAuth permissions, you need to grant your application some scopes. These scopes would allow them to be able to perform some actions. Now, we're building a chatbot, and the really biggest thing about chatbots is that chatbots receive messages and then they reply to messages. So the most important thing here is going to be the chat write. So the chat write is the most important one that we need. So let's grant it the chat write scope. So this is going to allow it to send messages. So we've given our bot the ability to send messages. Now we can go ahead and reinstall it to our workspace. So now we're going through an OAuth flow for the first time, and this is basically just indicating and authorizing that we're giving our app the ability to perform this particular action of sending messages. So once again, you do your allow, and now you can see that a bot user token has been generated. So this is a good time to take this bot user token and store it somewhere. Usually if you have something like LastPass, you can put it maybe in a security note, or sorry, in a secure note or something of that nature. But copy this, because this is going to be very important. We're going to be using this throughout our application. The next thing you want to do is to set up socket mode. I like to set up socket mode specifically because with socket mode, you can develop locally on your machine without any problems. Now, there are other ways to kind of get past it. So if you have ngrok or something like that, you can also use it. But socket mode really makes it much easier. You don't need to install any external applications. You can just simply go to socket mode and enable socket mode. Now, to enable socket mode, you need an app level scope. And this is something I didn't mention. There are different types of scopes with Slack. There is there are app level scopes, so which kind of manages your app level type configuration. You have your bot scopes, which is what we use to allow the bot to respond to messages and perform other actions. And you have the user scopes, and those scopes are really intended to perform actions on behalf of a user. And then there are those user scopes kind of fall into more administrative capabilities as well. All right, so let's call this our hello world app token, because that's what we're going to be using it. And by default, it has already selected the connections right scope as a scope that is needed to enable socket mode. So once we go ahead and generate it, once again, we're generating an app token, and we're going to need this app token for our local development. So you're going to need two things for your app local development: the bot token, which we generated earlier on, and now the app token, which we have just generated. So go ahead and copy this, and let's go ahead and say done. So now we can see that we have our token, our socket mode is enabled, and now you can go into events and actually subscribe to specific events. So first and foremost, you want to enable these events, because this is what's going to allow your bot to receive events. So when a client sends a message or triggers a particular event, your events need to be enabled. Now, with socket mode enabled, you don't need to specify a request URL. Now, if you're building the application without socket mode enabled, then you'll be able to actually specify a request URL, which is where Slack is going to be sending those events that come in. But the beauty of socket mode is that you don't need to do that. All you need to do is just basically turn on your enable events, and that's fine. Because your app is going to open up a WebSocket, it's going to receive those events through that socket. So now we're going to subscribe to a few events, and the most important event for a chatbot, and it depends on how you want your chatbot to perform. Now, some chatbots, some people build their chatbots to respond only when the chatbot is mentioned. If that is the case, then you need the app mention event. So that would be for any time your app is mentioned in a channel where it has been invited to, you can actually respond to that particular event. You can, but I also want to talk about like IM, message IM, and that's because I also think that your chatbot can just be just like any other user, and you can just chat with them. So in that case, using the message IM allows you to track events that are coming in a direct messaging channel, and you can handle those events using the message.im. One thing to keep in mind when you're using message.im is that it might make sense for you to filter the event, because this is going to be listening for direct messages for the most part. So it's important to kind of maybe filter on which messages specifically you want to listen to. All right, so now we have our event subscriptions handled. Next thing we want to do is to go ahead and save the changes. And you see here that Slack is telling us that we need to reinstall the app as well. Whenever you change scopes or you add events, those things mean that you need to reauthorize your application. So you go ahead and click on please reinstall, and you notice that one more authorization has been added here, or one more scope has been added here as well. So now you'll be able to kind of allow that, and then that reauthorizes your application again. Now, the other thing about our application as well is that we want our application to be able to receive messages. So we want to go into app home. Here you can actually make sure your bot is showing as online. You can change the name of your bot from here. So if you want to give your bot a particular interesting name, this would be where you want to go and do it. And now you can also say allow users to send / commands and messages from the messages tab. This would allow people to be able to send direct messages to your bot, which is what we want. So once you're done with this, now one thing I'll say about this is that sometimes it takes a little bit of time for this to actually propagate. So give it some time, maybe just sort of quit your Slack and reopen it before you will see this tick actually gets implemented. Okay, so that's it. That's all we actually need for our Slack application to work. The app token, the bot token. Next up, I'm going to show you exactly how we're going to run that application to allow us to receive messages and respond to messages directly based on what we've built. All right, so let's go ahead and actually set up our Hello World application. Now, the very first thing we want to do is to go ahead and create a new directory. So I am on my Mac, so I'm just going to go ahead and do an mkdir and say Slack Hello World app. Now I want to cd into this directory, so Slack Hello World app. And now I'm just going to open up my Visual Studio Code because I want to be using that. So let's go ahead and open this up just to make it much easier. So we have our app here, and I'm going to open up the terminal right here as well so that we can use this. And in my terminal, the very first thing I want to do, and you want to make sure that you already have Python installed. We're going to be using Python. And if you prefer to use JavaScript, I'm going to put a link to JavaScript as well. So you can use JavaScript to do this setup as well. But the very first thing we want to do is to set up a virtual environment. So in my case, I'm going to do Python 3 -m venv .venv, and then once I'm done with that, I'm also going to go ahead and activate my virtual environment. So that's source venv /bin /activate. So this should activate our virtual environment, as you can see. So we're now good to go. All right, so now next up, we want to get all those tokens that we talked about earlier on when we were creating our Slack app. So the bot token and the app token, we want to export that into our application here. Now, you know, in a production level application, you're probably going to be storing this in a secret store, and I'm going to show you how to do that with AWS when we get to the point where we're going to actually be deploying this. So export Slack bot token. Let me find my Slack bot token, should be right here, and I can go ahead and paste this, and I want to do the same thing also for my Slack app token. Again, to find your Slack app token, you need to go to basic information. If you didn't save it earlier on, it will be somewhere here, app level tokens. So you can go ahead and click on that. I'll copy that and export that into my environment. So I have both my Slack application, my Slack app token, and my Slack bot token all exported. Now the next thing I want to do is to install Slack Bolt. So Slack Bolt is the library we're going to be using. It's an SDK that has been built with all the capabilities, really simplifies how to build on Slack. So go ahead and do a pip install here, Slack_Bolt, and that would go ahead and install the application. So it does seem like we have our application now installed. Now the next thing we want to do again is to go in here. So let's go ahead and create a new file called app.py. So this is where we're going to be writing our logic. And the very first thing you want to do is to import the OS module, because we're going to be using that to access our environment variables within the app. And then what you want to do next is to get the app module from Slack Bolt. So I do have a Code Whisperer on, which I would actually advise you to use. It's really cool. It really does really great autocomplete of code. The next thing I'm importing is my socket mode handler. So remember, we're going to be using socket mode handler. This allows us to develop locally without having to expose any request URLs or anything like that. Okay, so those are the three that I need. And now I also need to initialize my app. In fact, you can see that it's showing me that as an example. In fact, I don't even need to write anything. So again, I want to set my app to the app module, and I'm now passing in my token, which has been stored in the Slack bot token environment variable. And now to start my app, basically, before we actually listen for anything, let's just start the app so that you can see that work. So start app, and we can say if main, because we're using socket mode handler, we're passing the app itself along with the app token, and then we're calling the function .stat. And once we save this and then run our code, so say app.py, let's see, let me use Python 3 app.py. This should get our app started. So you say Bolt app is running, so this means that our app is now ready to receive events. Okay, but we need to now go ahead and actually set up an event. The very first event we're going to be doing is just to listen for a hello event, and then we're going to basically respond to that event. Code Whisperer already knows what we're trying to do here, so listen to incoming events that start with hello. So now the way to use this is that you're going to be using a decorator and app.message. You can also use app.event and then specify that you're using a message, but in this case we're just going to use app.message. Does the same thing as well. Now, so that is the event. We're declaring that this is the event we're listening for, and we're just defining what parameter it is. Now I want to build a function that actually handles that event. So here we have a function called message_hello. You can pass a message. The message basically is coming from the event. So this is where the event payload, the message event payload is going to be here in this message. And say is a function that Slack Bolt comes with that makes it really easy for you to just simply respond to an event very, very quickly without actually using the chat.post message method at all. You can just use say instead. So this, I told you, Slack Bolt really simplifies how you build an application. And as you can see here, Code Whisperer is doing all the work for us. So when we receive a hello message, we're supposed to be responding with hello, and we're going to be asking the user to say hello. So let's go ahead and test that out and see how it actually works. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. Now I'm going to go into my Slack application here. So I think my Slack application should be open, and let's go into our Hello World application right here. And when I say hello, I should get a respond back. Okay, so we did get an event, but for some reason our event is not calling back. Okay, I think I see why. All right, so let's go ahead and stop this. I didn't stop it. I just quickly just called the event. So basically it had not taken shape. So again, I need to recall this. So app.py, and let's try it one more time. So let's go ahead and type hello. And now we should receive a response that says, hey there, at prompt guy. So this is really how easy it is to build a Slack application. It's event driven. You send a message, and then you define your event first and foremost, and then you define a handler for that event, which is going to be responding to that message. Next up, we're going to now be incorporating some AI capabilities to do the responding for us. So it's going to take this input that we've provided and then try to provide a response. But before we do that, we're going to jump into the OpenAI documentation to see how to use their API specifically. All right, so let's go ahead and actually incorporate OpenAI into our responses. Now, to do that here, let's just start by writing a quick comment here to say, make an API call to OpenAI. And right underneath here, what we need to do first and foremost is to use, just sort of create a variable called response. And in that variable, we're going to basically create, use our OpenAI to make a call using the chat completion .create method. And in there, we're going to pass the model. For the model, we're going to pass in GPT. We're going to pass in GPT 3.5 Turbo, and then so let's put it here, and then we're going to also use messages just like we did before. So messages is equal to an array, and inside that array we do have a bunch of roles. So the first role, we should be wrapping this around quotes. So role, in this case, the first role that we have here should be essentially a system role. So we'll say system, and we're going to say inside this role, the content should include, so content should include, you are a helpful assistant, and then we add another one. This one is going to be the user role. So again, we'll put in role, we'll do user this time around, and then for the content, this is where things change. So for the content itself, we're going to be passing the message received from the Slack message event. So we're going to be passing that message in there. So basically we can do something like message text, which it contains our actual message. And this is essentially what we need to do. And then, okay, so here we're going to respond back. So say the response back to the user. Okay, say the response, and here we're gonna say say. So say is a function which we can call like we did earlier on, and we're passing in response. The response is going to have choices, because you can have actually more than one. So you're using choices, you're selecting the very first one that returns. We haven't specified how many choices, so it's going to just default to one. So because it's doing that, we can just use 0 as the position, and then right inside the choice there, we want to pick up the message, and within the message we want to pick up, so message should be in quotes, so message, and after that we're also going to be doing the content of that message. So this should be it. So where it's basically, just to kind of walk through it one more time, once we get this event, we make an API call out to OpenAI using their chat completion endpoint. Basically, we're using their library here. So it's a module here, and we're creating this chat completion. We're using the GPT 3.5 Turbo model. It's one of the cheapest models. I'll advise you to use it as often as possible. And now within the messages, we have a system message, which is just sort of defining what the chatbot is supposed to do. And we are passing the message that was received from this event as the prompt and then returning a response. Now I want to remove this because right now it's listening for only hello messages, but I'm going to remove the hello and we're going to leave it blank, which means it's going to listen for all messages. So I go ahead and save this. Let's stop our current runner and go ahead and test it one more time. So Python 3, and I can say app.py here, and let's run it. Okay, so both app is running, so looks good. So now, all right, so now let's try it out. Let's ask a question. So what question are we gonna ask? Let's just say, what is the coolest thing about Slack? Let's ask a question. What's the coolest thing about Slack? And see if we're going to get a response back. Now we should be getting a response back. Okay, so as you can see, we now have a full-fledged ChatGPT working because now ChatGPT is now implemented as an AI language model. I'm not inclined to have personal opinions as humans do. However, based on feedbacks and reviews from Slack has several cool features that make it popular among users. So now we see that we do have like a response coming back from OpenAI, and we can ask more questions. We can say, you know, write a poem about a summer evening, you know. So now we have ChatGPT like powers right inside Slack with those few lines of code. And I think this is really what's powerful about large language models, is that you can now start to do some really cool things here. So you can see we have our poem has been generated. So think about this for your users internally. If you want to really contain how people use the large language model within your organization, or you want to provide a service that is really a chatbot, an intelligent chatbot, you can do it very, very quickly with a few lines of code, just like we've done it. But we're going to be looking at more advanced features and seeing exactly how we can use this even more to do some really cool stuff. So stay tuned to kind of see some of the other things that we're going to be building. We're going to be jumping in and looking at LangChain, which really is a library that provides like really, really cool possibilities in terms of what you can do with OpenAI's ChatGPT along with other large language models.